Okay, everybody, we're going to get started here. Welcome to our first In the Trenches webcast of 2015. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Today's In the Trenches webcast is all about resource management. And the first thing I want to talk about is social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we do have a LinkedIn group. Here are the links, and we would love to have you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and follow us on LinkedIn. We have a company page, and like I said, we have a Quick PMO group, and we'll be sending you out an invite to our Quick PMO group if you are not a member of that group, and we'd love to have you join us. So feel free to search us out in those areas, and we would love to have you join us.
And we'll be advertising a lot of our upcoming events on these social media pages too, right?
Yes,
okay, great.
Absolutely, and we do have a hashtag.
Great.
Our agenda today, I'm going to do quick introductions of who is here today. We're going to talk about the reason why we're doing these In the Trenches webcasts and what they are and how we want to relay the information to you. We're going to talk a little bit about Vibrant Fusion and our services, and then Erin is going to do the demo, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the solutions and services that relate to this In the Trenches webcast, and then we'll talk about next steps. Okay? So first off, my name is Nadine Sievers. I've been with Vibrant Fusion for almost 2 years now, and I've been in the technology business for over 15. I am your host today. Also, behind the scenes, we have Erin Quinn. She is our social media guru and our marketing specialist. She will be chatting out our social media links during the presentation, and she will also be capturing your questions. If you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and she will monitor those. And if we have time at the end, we'll go through those questions at the end, okay? Our presenter today is Aaron Harkleroad. He is a Microsoft VTSP for Project and Project Server. He has been deploying Project Server and SharePoint solutions for over a decade. He holds over 30 Microsoft technical certifications, woohoo. And him and I have worked together for many, many years. He is a wonderful speaker and presenter, and you will enjoy this very much today. So,
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. I don't know what time zone everyone's coming from, so good morning, afternoon, or evening.
And also, we're going to have Deepika Gandhi speak to some of these solutions throughout the presentation. And she is a former Microsoft employee, and she used to sell our solution, SharePoint and Project Server solutions a lot along the Mid-Atlantic. She has a multitude of experience across the industry, and she has also participated in Project Server and SharePoint solutions. So Deepika, welcome to you. You want to say hey real quick?
Hey. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Thanks, Nadine.
Sure. Great. So let's see what's next. All right, so let's talk about our theory behind these In the Trenches webcasts. We do so many Project Server implementations, Quick PMO implementations. We've done them for so many years. Our architects are so experienced. They come back to the office and they say, oh my gosh, this is what happened at this client site, this is what happened at this client site. And we're finding some commonality, and we wanted to talk about these in a positive way, talk about the challenges that the clients had and what solutions and success that we were able to deliver. And we felt that this would be a great way to talk about these solutions in a very topic-focused area of managing projects. So every month we're going to present the topic, we're going to talk about the customer challenge, we're going to highlight our solution, and it's a great way for you to see that. So it is, we try to balance it with a little bit of training, a little bit of tips and tricks, and our solutions. So we don't want this to be totally salesy. We want it to be meaningful. So at the end of the presentation, I will be showing you the links to all of our In the Trenches webcasts. We have them monthly. We will have another one at the end of February, and they will be around the third or fourth Wednesday of every month. And there will be a link for each webcast, or there's also a link that will take you to the page that will show you all of them. And we're also going to have a survey at the end, so if there's a topic that you don't see and you'd like to suggest, you can input that in the survey. So that's really what this is all about. So real quickly, want to talk about our solutions and our services. Today, with resource management, we're going to talk about mostly report packs for Project Server and Project Online. And in our services column, we're going to talk about our project schedulers. We're going to have, Aaron's going to show you the report packs, and Deepika is going to speak to the project schedulers. All of our other solutions, we also have Quick PMO, which is a pre-configured project server solution. We also do Quick PMO for Agile, so you can manage waterfall and Agile projects in the same tool. And we're also going to talk about a new product we're coming out with called Canvas. And Aaron, can you give a quick synopsis of what that is?
Sure. So Canvas is a self-service BI tool. One of the challenges with Project Server or Project Online is getting data and getting the reports you want out of that environment. So it's a very rich, robust application, stores all kinds of information about your projects, your schedules, your resources, their availability. But it doesn't come with a lot of out-of-the-box reports. It comes with very few. And in addition to that, the BI tools that you can use to construct reports, some of them can be a little complicated. Excel can be used for a lot of report building, and lots of folks have Excel skills. But if you wanted to build some more compelling reports, you might have to look at Power Pivot, SQL reporting services, and those all come with kind of a steep learning curve. So Canvas is, as I mentioned, it's a self-service BI tool. It's graphically driven, so it has a nice GUI interface. And in terms of level of complexity, if you've built things like charts, bar charts, pie charts, things like that, in Excel, you can certainly handle the complexity of Canvas, but it gives you a lot more flexibility than what you can do with those reports in Excel. So that's Canvas.
Thank you. So just to talk about our services real quick, we are a Microsoft partner, and we do full-blown project server implementations. We also have a tool, like I said, Quick PMO, and Aaron will be demoing all about resource management utilizing Project Server and Quick PMO and Project Online, and he will speak to those during the demo. Deepika will talk about project schedulers later on in the presentation. And we also offer support and training. And we have support plans specifically for Project Server, Project Online, Quick PMO. And we can speak to that more at the end, or we can take that offline and get you more information on that. And we also have a full-bodied project and portfolio management workshop offering as well. So what is our next slide? Okay.
Well, it's the demo agenda, but I think we want to do
yeah.
some introductions other than
we
us.
want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, because I'm sure you're tired of hearing from me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the list of people, and I'm going to call everybody out. And I just want you to introduce yourself and one interesting fact about yourself. Anything like that. There's no pressure here. If you want to talk about where you work and what you're hoping to get out of this, great. If you want to just say hello and I'm glad to be here, that's fine too. No pressure. So this looks like it's in alphabetical order, so we're going to start with Alicia.
Good morning. So I work for a bank on Long Island, and I'm looking to get out of this the information you want to tell us about resource management. I work in the data governance group as well as risk management within the organization.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on the list, we're going to hear from Deepika later. Erin Quinn, would you like to say hi real quick?
Hi everyone, thanks for coming.
Yeah, as I said earlier, Aaron is our social media guru, so thanks, Aaron. Josh, you're next.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Josh Martin. I also work at Vibrant Fusion as a solution architect, and just here to support Aaron, and looking forward to the presentation.
Wonderful. And Lisa?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I just like hearing Aaron's presentations, and hopefully I'll get some useful information to help with our projects internally.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And Martin?
Hello everyone, this is Martin. Basically the same. I'm new to project server project online, and I'm just hoping to get a bit more out of it with regards to resource management.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Todd?
Hi, good morning, afternoon. My name is Todd Galing. I am the manager of the IT PMO at American Water. I am here because I want to learn a little more about, I want to take the complexity that we have in our resource management process, and hopefully learn about some things that would make it a little more digestible, a little simpler, and lead to better reporting data. That's, I guess, primarily why I'm here.
Great. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, and I'm glad you're here. Okay. I will get back to the viewer people. Walter. Can you speak, Walter?
Might be on mute.
Okay. Since I don't know anyone else's names, would anyone else like to introduce themselves? Go ahead and just speak up.
Hi, this is Shilpa. I work for Ava. I'm here to learn more about the new tools and how we can incorporate those in our.
Wonderful. Thanks, Silpa. I'm so glad to have you here. Would anyone else like to speak up?
Hi, my name is Steve Dan. I'm a project manager at Ryder here in Miami, and I'm joining also to learn what I can about Microsoft Project Server. I've used it before in the past, but we're working off of Clarity, and at some point we'll be making a move, so I'm just trying to get some information on the latest version and things of that nature.
Awesome. That is wonderful. Thanks. Thanks, Steve. Anyone else, would they like to introduce themselves? Okay. Well, feel free to chat your questions in the chat box, and Aaron Quinn will log those, and if we have time at the end, we will definitely get to those. So, Aaron, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nadine. So this slide has been up for a few minutes now while we've been doing the intro, so I won't read it back to you. But obviously the focus on this is going to be on the resource management aspect of it. So getting the right resources on your project team, making sure that you're not over allocating them, all that good stuff. Taking a look at some of the reports and dashboards that can illuminate that information for you. So I'm going to bounce over to my demo environment here.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, is this project Server 2013?
Actually, yeah, thanks. It is. So this is Project Online specifically. That just means it's hosted in Microsoft's data center. So organizations can deploy Project Server in their own data center. They call that an on-premises deployment. Or they can look to third-party providers or Microsoft specifically to host it for them. And if you go with Microsoft, it's called Project Online. Currently, they're on the 2013 version. So, yeah, this is Project Server 2013. However, a lot of our Quick PMO components are in here as well. So, specifically these tiles at the top and the dashboards that we have at the bottom, these are all Quick PMO tools. So I'll circle back and, specifically talk about some of those a little bit later on through the demo. First thing I'm going to do, though, is let's deal with some resource management on some specific projects. So I'm going to navigate into the Project Center. So this is just standard Project Server, Project Online. This is the location where all of the projects in the portfolio exist. Depending upon who I am, I might see all of those projects. I might just see certain projects that are affiliated with me, maybe projects within my department, or if I'm a PM, maybe just the projects that I manage. So I am going to navigate into, I've got a couple migration projects here that I'm currently working on. So I'm going to assume the persona of a project manager in this. I'm going to open up this Office 365 migration project. And in Project Server 2013, you do have the ability, when you go into the Project Center and you open up a project, it's not just about schedule management. So you can take a look at some project details, any kind of cost information, start finish dates. If you are doing the portfolio analysis piece, you can go in and take a look at what we call it the strategic impact, or what the ratings of this project against my organization drivers are. But again, since the focus today is on resource management, let's kind of cut to the chase here. Let's jump to the schedule. And you can use the web browser to manage your project schedule in Project Server, but it's not as robust as using the Project Professional tool. And certainly when it comes to seeing resource utilization, resource over allocation, stuff like that, editing things in the browser is okay for real rudimentary tasks like renaming a task, changing duration. But if you want to deal with that, the whole life cycle of resource management, you're probably going to want to primarily focus on Project Pro for the schedule management. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this particular project in Project Professional. Give it a second to load. Okay, and we can see we've got pretty robust, pretty detailed work breakdown structure already defined. Nice even 100 tasks in my schedule. I've got some resources assigned to the tasks. Okay, so I see Nadine there is handling some of my scope tasks. But then I also see some generic resources that are still on some of these. And in the default view, which I've opened here, the Gantt chart, I'm noticing right away we've got this little red stick figure here that we affectionately refer to as Burning Man.
Yeah, you know what? I had a customer reach out to me when we posted your write-up on the Burning Man, and he said, when did Burning Man first appear?
Yeah. Burning Man hasn't been around forever. If you've been using Project Professional for a while or Project Standard for a while, it was introduced in 2010. So if you've been using 2003, 2007, some of the older versions, it wasn't as visual in the older versions of Project. It didn't jump out at you when you had an over-allocation. And an over-allocation just simply means whoever is assigned to that task, whether it's one or more people, you're putting more work on their plate than they can handle in that particular time period. So each resource has a working schedule, and they have a max capacity setting. Some resources might only work 50% of the time on projects. So if you're giving them more than, say, 4 hours a day on certain tasks, they would show an over-allocation. Okay. So one of the first things I want to do here is, I want to figure out, I've got analyst, a generic on this. And that kind of bears mentioning. When you see over-allocations on generic resources, I wouldn't necessarily worry right then and there about fixing the over-allocation issue. I would wait till I have real people assigned to them, because analyst is a generic, it's not an actual human being. So I'm going to go into the resource tab here. I'm going to use my build team from Enterprise. So anybody that's ever worked in an enterprise project in Project Server, this is how you get the resources on your project team.
So where do these resources come from?
Great. Okay, so when I go into the build team window here, it shows me on the right-hand side the resources that are already on my project team, whether they're generic resources or whether they're real human beings. And on the left-hand side, it shows me my enterprise resources that I can select from. So we call it an ERP, or an enterprise resource pool. So this is really one of the main things that distinguishes Project Server and Project Online from those environments out there where PMOs are just dealing with local project schedules and no Project Server in the back end. With local project schedules, you don't really have a true enterprise resource pool. Yes, you can set up, through a network share, some shared resources, but it's not nearly as robust, and it's going to be really difficult to tell when you have resources that are shared across multiple projects. Are you in fact, doing the right type of resource utilization? Are you over allocating people, under allocating people? So these are coming from that enterprise pool. And also, you get some features like this with an enterprise pool. So I want to replace this analyst with a real human being. So rather than just, randomly picking somebody from the list, you've got a match option. So it can use the role configuration in the enterprise resource pool, determine who's mapped to that analyst role. And above and beyond that, that's a lot of analysts. I'm not quite sure yet at who at this point I might want to use, but I know this is an Office 365 migration project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, and under my filters, I'm going to add an additional filter. So you can create enterprise fields, such as skills, and use these in your filter. So I'm going to say, hey, I want to make sure that the skills field contains Office 365. If they don't know anything about Office 365, I'm not sure I want them as an analyst on this particular project. So I'm going to click apply on that, and that narrows down my pool greatly. It leaves one person left. Erin's actually our, marketing and social media, but in my demo environment, I use her as an analyst. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to replace the analyst role with her. Hit OK. And what you'll notice in the Gantt chart here, okay, is any of the tasks that were previously assigned to that analyst role, they're now assigned to Erin. Okay? And also, at the same time, replacing the generic with the human being, that did not resolve the over-allocation issue here. So I'm still seeing Burning Man. So there's a number of things we can do now to fix whatever's causing this over-allocation issue. And I'm going to show you some, not every single option under the sun, because that would take more than an hour and a half. But I'll show you some of the more common ones. Hopefully help you pick up a few tricks as well. I mean, over here, I can see it's pretty obvious just in the Gantt itself that there are a lot of tasks that are just simply coinciding. The 5-day tasks that all start on January 30th. So, some of these are pretty obvious why they're happening. Some might not be so obvious. One tool that most people use to fix these over allocations is, if you're using 2010 or 2013, you go to the resource tab in the ribbon to find it. And there's this level resource option. Okay, that'll allow you to level individual resources that are over allocated. There's also a level all option. You can level the entire project. In either of these cases, before you just jump into either one, you should take a look at what the leveling options are here first. So I'm gonna start there. So if I open the leveling options, one thing that you can do is you can just simply turn on automatic leveling in your schedule. And what that means is the scheduling engine, as soon as you have an over-allocated assignment, it's going to try to move it around to avoid that over-allocation. Very few people actually go with that. It creates a lot of work on the back end. It tends to slow things down. And a lot of times you might not like what it does in terms of how it resolves the over-allocation. So generally you leave this as manual. Okay. You can level just certain date ranges here, or you can level the entire project. I'm going to leave that on with this particular scenario here. The leveling order then, this is really critical here. So you have a couple options here. You could say, just do it based on ID only. Okay? And now in my Gantt chart, I'm not showing what the ID column is, but let me go ahead and insert my ID column. And when I level by ID only, you're rarely going to do this. But what it'll do is it'll literally start from the bottom. So your higher number tasks are going to get leveled before your lower number tasks. So you're kind of looking at everything in a priority order. That's rarely used. So usually you would either go with standard or priority and standard. Okay, so if I select standard here, there's an order that it follows. It's going to try to level tasks, but at the same time, it's going to take a look at task relationships like predecessors. It's not going to break the predecessor-successor relationship to do so. It's going to try to do so within Slack. So if you have any Slack lag time in your tasks, it's going to try to use up the Slack first to make reassignments and move dates around. It'll then just shift start dates if it can't do so within Slack. After that, it'll look at the priority. And last, it will see if there are any constraints there that can be modified in order to level the resource or avoid the over-allocation, make that Burning Man symbol go away. I generally would recommend priority and then standard. And what that means is, if I go ahead and OK that, Okay, you can show the priority column right here. Every task in a project has a priority, and the default is 500. It's right in the middle of the scale, which runs from 0 to 1,000. If I put 1,000 on any of these, that's telling the system don't level that particular task. Okay, so I want to keep that one as is. It'd be kind of the same as putting a constraint on it. So if I was going to properties of the task, I could simply say, on the advanced tab here, hey, start this no earlier than a certain date. Okay, but constraints are generally used for other reasons. Like, I can't start this because I'm waiting on hardware, or I'm waiting on something that's outside my control with respects to this task. This is just simply telling the tool, look at other tasks first for leveling before you do anything with this one. And actually, with a number of 1,000, it won't level it. If I go with something like 750 here, and oops, not where I meant to type it, over here in the priority column. Okay, that's just simply putting a higher number, and that means it's going to level all the lower numbers first, but it can still level this task. You put 1,000 in, it's just flat out not going to level that. Okay, so for the purposes of this, I'm just going to leave them all even, and I'm going to go into level resources. Okay, I can level everyone, or I can selectively pick which resources I want to level. Okay, so I can see here, without going through the whole entire project, Erin has a fair amount of over allocations already, so I'm going to select her first. Okay, I'm going to say level now. And it changes a lot of details in the schedule. So a couple things I want to point out. Hopefully the colors are coming through pretty good on the screen sharing here, but any dates, when you have rolling changes in a schedule, you changed one thing and it impacted 50 other tasks, you'll see the blue highlighting in there. So this is basically telling me, all of these dates have changed as a result of that one leveling operation. Okay. Now I still have some over allocations down below, but if you look at those are on different resources. I just said level Erin Quinn, so it's not adjusting those tasks right now. If I had selected level all, then it would have tried to level every over allocation in here. Okay. Now, in addition to just looking at the blue highlights and figuring out what changed, there are some other columns and views you can utilize to see what's going on under the hood, so to speak. So I'm going to add in. There's a leveling delay field. Okay, and when you add leveling delay to your view, you can see through the result of leveling what changes were made. Okay, to individual tasks. So how far they were pushed back. There's also a different Gantt view that you can look at. So I'm just looking at the standard Gantt over here. If I wanted to see things like critical tasks, everything that's on the critical path, I could switch over to something known as the tracking Gantt, and that's going to highlight my critical tasks in red. Okay, now keeping it in the discussion of what we're talking about here, if you want to see the effects of leveling, there's also a Gantt called the leveling Gantt. When you pull the view drop down, anytime you pull the view drop down, if you don't see the one you're looking for, they're generally sorted alphabetically, just go to more views and select it in there. And if I pull the leveling Gantt, what it's going to do over on the Gantt chart side of the task, it's going to have in brown when the task was previously scheduled, okay, and then in blue where the task is currently scheduled. So I can see how much all of these moved. So basically, it moved the task out. Now, it didn't change the predecessor-successor relationship if I look over here. It just simply moved the start dates on them through leveling. Okay.
That really gives a good view of what the original tasks were scheduled and how much that pushes that out. That can really affect a lot of the project.
It really does. It really does. And I mean, and if my project was in good shape and it was to the point where planning was pretty much done, and I want to take a snapshot of that so that I can always compare down the road any of my variances. Another thing that you would do is you'd take a baseline of this project. We're going to talk about that in more detail in some of our other In the Trenches sessions. But baselining is also something that's critical to tracking how your projects are doing over time.
I know you just showed us a great way, but are there any other ways to level resources other than what you've just shown us?
Sure. So we are kind of at the tip of the iceberg. So on the resource tab, all of these options over here in the level menu. These have been around for a while. They may have changed location as to where you find them in Project Pro, but these are what I would call tool-driven leveling. Project managers a lot of times would like to manually handle the leveling, so do it themselves versus having the tool making all these changes behind the scenes. So I'm going to go through some of those options as well. I'm also gonna kind of go back and forth, change some things, see the effect. This clear leveling, you can use the clear leveling to reverse the changes on leveling. It's not quite the same as undo because I may have done some other things in the last 2 or 3 minutes. So undo, if it was the very last thing I did, would work. However, if you just want to remove the effects of leveling, there's a clear leveling option over here. And so other ways then, other options for resolving some of these over allocation issues. Right on the Burning Man itself, if you right click, there are a couple options right there. So there's this thing called the Task Inspector, which was also introduced in 2010. If you say fix this in the Task Inspector, what it's going to do is it's going to bring that up as a pane on the left-hand side here, and it's going to give you a couple options. Okay, so one of the options is just, hey, let's just reschedule this to whatever the resource's next available time is. Okay, so I can click on that, and again, you can see now the difference here is it just did it on that one task. So I could continue. If you have a lot of over allocations, okay, you can certainly take this approach, but it might take you a while to get through it. Also, this using the Task Inspector does tend to be a little bit more resource intensive than the leveling options. So I'm not discouraging anybody from using the Task Inspector, but when you have some more complicated schedules out there and you use the Task Inspector, a lot of times I'll see the spinning circle, and it seems like project becomes unresponsive for a little bit. That's it's doing some things in the background, and it is a little bit of a slower process for handling some of the leveling options. The other thing you have here is you have this link to the Team Planner. Okay, so Team Planner is just a different view. You don't have to use Task Inspector to get to it. So if I'm on a Gantt chart already, and I just simply come over to the View tab, okay, I can pull my drop downs there, or you can see it in the menu. Team Planner. Team Planner is a nice graphical way. You can do a couple things with this. If there were any unassigned tasks, they would show up down here. So yeah, I don't have any, but imagine I had a development task down here that was not assigned to anybody. Okay, it would show up in terms of its duration over here on the right-hand side. And the cool thing is, I could just drag it up to a resource that has availability during that time period. So Procurement Manager has nothing on this time period here. I could use drag and drop to do an assignment, which is pretty nice.
That's nice.
Okay. The other thing you can do when you have over allocation issues, you're going to see the red brackets like you have here. So here's Erin Quinn. I already know she's over allocated quite a bit in this early February timeframe. So what I can do is I can take some of those tasks and I can visually see when they might fit. So I'm just going to drag. I'm going to start dragging things around. I'm going to drag that task over here. Now it didn't remove the entire over allocation problem. I still see the red brackets because there's other tasks that are still in conflict with each other. Okay, but I'm going to drag a couple of those. Now, this is an okay approach for people that aren't really comfortable with using the leveling tool in general. However, I will kind of give you a warning. When you use this Team Planner view and you use the drag and drop options of rescheduling tasks, I'm going to switch back to the Gantt chart and show you something. It places a constraint on those tasks. So anything that I changed on the Team Planner view through a drag and drop, it's just it's nature of the beast. It's how the tool works. It adds a constraint to those tasks. It's what we call an SNET, or a start no earlier than constraint. And again, those constraints, they serve a purpose. Okay, a start no earlier than means we're not supposed to start this task prior to a certain date. Usually because you're waiting on some type of external dependency. You shouldn't really use constraints to get around resource overallocation issues. If the driving factor here was simply that Erin is doing all of these tasks and she can't do them all at once, you shouldn't really use constraints to alleviate that issue. You should use better scheduling, set up predecessor successor. She can't do all of these simultaneously, or if she is supposed to do all of these simultaneously, she shouldn't be allocated at 100% on them. So maybe, yes, these are all 5 days, and they're all going to run from January 30th through February 5th, at least these first 3 tasks are, but maybe she's only going to be allocated 20% on them. Okay, so I'm gonna hit undo on a couple of these. There we go. So I'm back to my team planner, and I have basically done an undo on both of those drag and drops. So my constraint indicator is gone here. Okay, so again, I could, task by task, I could go through here on the resource tab. I could simply change her allocation units, drop her to 20% on each. Okay. Or I could set up predecessor, successor. I could link the tasks. So if I link all of these, it's going to automatically create a finish to start. So the second task can't start till the first one finishes, and so on and so forth. So that, that helps me get around this particular overallocation issue. And plus, if these are all done by the same person at 100%, I mean, they naturally would have a finish to start on them anyway. Okay. Another option that we have, and actually my favorite option in terms of starting place. So, I don't always start in the demos where I normally would start in the real world. I kind of want to show you some things that you have at your disposal. You might use them, you might not use them. The place where I generally start when I have a lot of overallocation issues is I will use a task usage or a resource usage view, not the Gantt. The Gantt is good for a real 30,000 foot view picture of the schedule. It's not a great view for some of your heavier task and resource management operations. So again, over here on the View tab, if I pull the drop down on the Gantt chart, the difference between the task usage and the resource usage, they're essentially the same thing. It's just whether you're focusing on grouping everything by the task. Okay, so if I go to task usage, here I'm grouping everything by the task, and I can see the assignments below each task, whether it's one or more people. Okay, resource usage looks very similar, but you're grouping it by the resource. And if we're dealing with a resource utilization issue, I would kind of rather utilize that view. So I'm going to switch to the resource usage one. And the overall look and feel won't change a lot, but what it did is it grouped everything by the resource instead of by the task. The other thing this allows me to do, I'm not quite ready to deal with the tester assignments yet, or the PMO. Those are coming much later on in the schedule. Okay. All of my tasks that are assigned to Nadine, I can see what they are. Here, I can see the amount of hours. And over on the right, I've got my little time phase window. Now, what I want to do first is I want to adjust that. I want to deal with exactly the time scale I want here. Okay, so if I go right click over here, go to time scale. Okay, I can see that I'm only showing 2 tiers, the middle and the bottom. My middle tier is showing weeks. My bottom tier is showing days. If I wanted to, kind of zoom out a little bit, I could change that around. I could change the middle tier to months and change the bottom tier to weeks. It'll just be doing everything at much more a macro scale. Okay, so whatever your preference is here, get your time scale in order first. Now another thing, I wasn't really dealing with Nadine in this. I was dealing with Erin. So let me go down to her. Okay, and make mention of a couple things. One thing, if there are any over allocations, you probably already noticed there's going to be some red text that shows up. Okay. Another thing that you'll notice, if you scroll over to certain areas, you can see red text over on the right-hand side as well. Okay. The reason I like this view is this gives you the option in a project server environment, okay, to show not only the assignments that people have within your project plan, but also gives you some high-level details on what they're dealing with in other projects. And a lot of times, that's where the overallocations really come from. You may have laid out everything perfectly in your plan, but if you're sharing resources with other projects, then they may have assignments in certain time frames that you weren't completely aware of. Okay, So what I'm going to do is, now I'm not seeing that in here right now, and that's due to the nature of how I opened this project. So I'm going to close this, discard my changes, okay, and I'm going to walk you through another option. However, while I'm doing that, in the background, you're seeing a lot of details in here, and you're seeing a lot of the power of Project Pro. Project Pro is an extremely powerful tool, and it's an extremely complex tool. We do have some ways in Vibrant Fusion that we can help our clients better utilize the tool. And while I'm making some changes in the background, I want to switch back over to my slide deck here for a little bit and turn it over to Deepika and just let her speak a little bit about an offering we have, Project Schedulers. So Deepika, if you wouldn't mind jumping in here a little bit and tell these folks how we can help them out.
Sure, absolutely. So we have a few different things I think we can help with. I think it's pretty evident based on Aaron's presentation so far that MS Project is a pretty complex tool, and most project managers who are what we call accidental PMs, who had a day job and now are managing a few projects, are not very familiar with some of the detailed scheduling and other features in MS Project. So we do offer training, and that's an important piece that we build in actually to any of our engagements, just because we know how hard it is just from a change management perspective. So we offer project manager training, so any of you are interested in that, do let us know. But more importantly, what Aaron was alluding to is our project scheduler program. And essentially what that gives you is some mentoring, some help for your PMs to get your schedules in shape. And the reason we kind of find this as an important piece is because as Aaron was going through all the different pieces of resource scheduling, planning and keeping your schedules or better scheduling is very important to avoid resource over-allocation and resource leveling as well. So in our scheduler program, what we offer is a trained MS Project scheduler who will work with you and your team and your PMO in closely with your PM specifically, and they essentially help with cleaning up your MS Project schedules and making sure that dependencies are set right, baselines are set right, and so they can avoid any over-allocation and do resource leveling for you. We typically see one resource scheduler for every 4 to 6 PMs, but we have had customers where we'll have a scheduler working with a very large portfolio, which might be more than 6 PMs. So it really depends on your needs, but essentially the job of the scheduler is to help your PM or your PMs really get familiar with better scheduling and help them through the process. So if any of you are interested in that offering, do let us know and we're happy to help.
Great, thanks Deepika. Okay, so I'm going to bounce back to that project that I had opened previously. Okay, and one of the things that I want to show you here is a way to manually level resources. So I've shown you a couple of ways that the tool can do it automatically. Okay, so again, go to the resource tab, use one of the level options, level resource, level all, or on the task inspector. Okay, fix it in the task inspector. But there are other ways that a PM can manually do it.
Yeah, and could leveling a resource in one project cause an over-allocation in another project? I mean...
Well, yeah. So that's going to allow me to segue into what I show them next. So if you do use one of these leveling options, if I fix it in the task inspector, or I go to resource and I say level the resource and it moves things around in this schedule, it's not opening up every enterprise project when it does that. So it's alleviating the issue in this one project. It may push some tasks out in another project where the resource had assignments and they weren't over allocated there, But by pushing these tasks out, now you've kind of doubled up on that resource in that time frame. So yeah, when you use the automatic options in here, unfortunately, using some of these leveling options could cause an over-allocation problem in another project. So you fix one and cause issues in the other. So that's where I kind of started on it, and now I'm going to come back to it using this resource usage view. When you launch Project Professional, if you launch it manually, okay, it's going to ask you on the opening screen, do you want to load summary assignments? It's checked by default. Normally, you want to leave that box checked. Again, it says load summary assignments. And if you do that, then what that's going to do is give you visibility into not just the project you're loading, but in terms of resource utilization, other projects in the environment as well. Only applies in a project server or project online environment. This would not apply if you're a standalone. You're just using Project Pro. But what I did while Deepika was discussing our resource schedulers is I closed the project and I reopened it. I forgot previously that I forgot to check that box. I was playing around with some things in a demo earlier. I loaded it back up with the summary assignments selected. So now when I go to resource usage, okay, again, I'm going to collapse procurement manager, I'm going to collapse tester and PMO. We're going to deal with them later. Nadine looks good. There's no red text on her whatsoever, but Erin has these over allocations in here, okay? And we can see, where they exist in our schedule. Another thing that we'll notice is on resources, there's a drop down here if they have other projects and commitments. And if they do, all you have to do is expand it out. Okay, unfortunately, I chose somebody there under Nadine who doesn't have any. Let me see if I can go up here and there we go. PMO, other projects and commitments. If you expand it out, it will show you, it won't show you task by task, but it'll show you the other projects, what assignments that they do have. Okay, now with regards to Erin, if I scroll back down to the bottom here, okay, that other projects and commitments, it's not showing up underneath her in here, which pretty much tells me she's not on any other projects. So what that means is I could use this over here to just manually come in, and if I want to do some things like, okay, it's not actually 8 hours a day she's working on this, okay, I can change the day-to-day assignments of what she's working on in the resource usage or the task usage form. Okay, now that's still 11 hours, so that's still an over allocation, but you get the idea of what we're doing here. So you can manually, I can delete any work on this day. Okay, I can move it out and say, hey, I want to have her do 2 hours on this task here. You can use the entry form on the right to manually go in and say very specifically when you want the resource to work on specific tasks. Now, one thing you may have noticed, once I start typing over here on the entry form, you're going to see a different graphical indicator here. That's just showing me that the assignment work has been edited on this. Okay, so if I made a bunch of changes and I didn't really like them and I want to revert back on the same view, I can right click, I can go to the information tab, and there's this option here called contour. I could change it from a contoured task back to a flat task, and that's essentially going to undo a lot of the changes that I did. Okay, so with regards to using this for manual operations, again, let me go up and even though I'm not really leveling the PMO role here in my previous example, you can use this to make sure that if you move tasks in the current schedule, okay, so if I had, some work right here on Tuesday, February, hover over this and it'll tell me what exact day it is. Okay, it's taking too long, but whatever specific day this is, if I'm going to move any of that work, I can see the other projects that I'm working on and make sure that you don't have it conflict with any of those other ones. So this resource usage view really gives you probably the best starting point for addressing any over-allocated resources that you have, and whether you manually, move assignments around in here, or whether you just use it to kind of inform you, okay, if I do use the built-in leveling tool, I can come back here and see when it leveled, did it cause issues with any of the other projects out there? Okay, and it's a great starting point. Again, what I am going to do is I'm just going to close this project, discard it. Okay, I'm going to open it one final time. Okay, now it takes me back to the analyst role again. So I'm just going to replace it with Aaron. And just for this, the ease of simplicity and all that good stuff, I'm going to go ahead, assign Aaron all the analyst tasks. So again, match analyst. Okay, I narrow it down to just those roles. I'm going to select her. I'm going to replace that analyst role. Okay, I'm going to go through. Now I saw it didn't look like she was on any other projects, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the built-in leveling tool here. Selected resources, select her, go ahead and level her out. All right, and it looks like if I do go back to that resource usage view, and specifically look for her, she's down at the bottom, no red text. So I can kind of tell that right now, and I can see what it did over on my entry form where it assigned all of the allotments of work for these individual tasks. I can see what it did. I'm going to go ahead. Those of you that work with enterprise projects in a project server environment, you're familiar with this already. Whenever you make changes in a project and you're ready to make them visible to the rest of the world, you publish the schedule. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I've shown you, a number of things you can use inside Project Pro to fix resource overallocation issues. For just visibility's sake, there are a couple other things in here. So if I go to the Report tab and I pull the Resources drop down, there is a built-in overallocated resources report. Doesn't let you change anything, but it does, again, it illuminates to you if you have overallocated resources and where they are. You also have, if you're looking at a Gantt chart, okay, one of the things you can do on the View tab is you can split your screen. Over here on the Details, you can select a drop-down view, and I think that's because it's conflicting with my little Join Me drop-down here. So let's try this again. Go to the Details view, select a different view, and there's a neat one called the Resource Graph that specifically shows you overallocations on a task-by-task basis. So down below is my resource graph, and if I go down to a resource that is overallocated, you can see if I click on a task that doesn't have an overallocated resource, the graph shows me all good information over here on the right. Shows me what their allocation is with a color coding, so it's a full allocation, but it's in blue. If I click on a task that has overallocated resources, and again, scroll to where that task lives, it'll show the assignments up to their max capacity in blue, but anything beyond max capacity, it'll show them in red. So again, good for illuminating that information. But this resource graph doesn't really let you change any data.
Okay, so in a perfect world, I want to be the best project manager I can be. I want to be proactive. I want to avoid overallocation at all costs before it happens. What can I do to be proactive on that?
Okay, yeah, so let's try when we're actually doing our build team operation and stuff like that, and when we're staffing the project, let's try to grab people that do have availability first and foremost. So I'm going to show you some of the things that we have in that regard. I'm going to publish this project one last time. And the remainder of what I demo, I'm probably not going to come back to Project Pro much. I mean, if we do have some Q&A at the end and you have questions on that, I can. But being proactive and making sure that you pull the right resources, you have visibility into what your resources are doing ahead of time, that's really key here. And not everybody in most organizations has Project Pro. Generally speaking, just the project managers do. It's a more expensive license. So organizations don't buy it for everybody that accesses Project Server. And there are other folks that are, part of the whole workflow and life cycle of resource management. You've got resource managers, team leads. Those types of folks also need to have that kind of visibility into what their team's doing. Do we have enough developers? We're going to take on a big development project. Are we good with that? And that's where we mentioned some of our report pack reports earlier in the demonstration. So before I went into the actual live demo, we talked about some of our offerings. So we have back to Project Online here, landing page, these blue tiles. Some of these take you to reports that are part of our report pack. So for instance, if I was wanting to see how all the projects within a certain portfolio are doing, we've got a program and portfolio dashboard for that. And again, future In the Trenches session, we'll talk about things like that. I'm going to show you some of the reports, but I'm going to keep it focused specifically on the resource utilization and resource management ones. So basically, we have 3 in our report packs. We have something called resource schedules, resource capacity analysis, and role capacity analysis. And I'm going to go through them one by one. I'll start with the role capacity analysis report. And these do work in both an on-premises and a project online environment. So what the role capacity analysis allows us to do, this could be part of portfolio planning. It could also be part of a life cycle where a PM gets together with resource managers on a week-by-week basis to determine, hey, I'm a PM. I've got some heavy-duty development tasks coming up 2 weeks from now. I need to meet with the developer team lead and figure out who is going to be available for that. This could be a starting point for that. So in a role capacity analysis, we've got several parameters here. So if I select a role, okay, so I'll go with developer this time. So if I go with the developer role, I can pick a start and an end date. So let's say starting February 2nd and ending the end of the month. What this is doing is it's looking over in the enterprise resource pool. It's gathering all of the individuals that map to the developer role, combining all of their assignments to basically show us, we've got this black line that represents capacity. So if I had 5 developers, that capacity line would be a lot lower. That might be 800 hours worth of availability in the time frame. But this calculation is coming from however many people map to that developer role. So that's my max capacity. Okay, I'm at 850 hours of work in roughly this 1 month time frame, and that looks like it's about half capacity, which is good. So overall, that doesn't mean I don't have some individual developers who might be over allocated, but in general, the developer role itself, there's a lot of availability out there. Plus, below the graph, I can pull the drop down on the developer role, and I can see what projects the developers are working on and how much work is coming from each project. Okay. Plus, I can see what the overall capacity and the overall utilization of my developers are. So by having the enterprise resource pool configured in such a manner that I'm using a role field and I'm aligning my resources with specific roles, I can pull this information out. Plus, in this report, this role capacity analysis, we've got some export options. So, if you need to pipe this out for a PowerPoint or something like that, you can export the visual part of it as an image file. You can export the table, the chart. So, if I click on either of these, it's going to allow me to export, either the chart or the table. So depending upon which one I need, or I could export both of them and paste them in. Or if I want to see all of the data in Excel and maybe slice and dice it inside a pivot table in Excel, I can also open that up. Okay, now usually, when you do an export to Excel, a lot of times your columns aren't, set with the proper width, but it pulls my information in here where I could, again, build maybe a pie chart off of this. So the bar chart's great, but maybe I want to see a pie chart of the work distribution across these projects for my developer. So, another option that you have. Of course, there's also a print button here for this report. So role capacity analysis can be one way to stay proactive, particularly if you knew that there's a massive development project coming up, kicking off in April. Let's look forward. Let's change these dates out to April and see what we've got in April. So it would be as simple as just changing the start, the end date, hitting apply, and it's gonna be the same report, but it's going to go out to a future time frame and see what we've got going on in the April time frame. We're a little bit closer to full capacity, so we might want to dive down a little bit more deeply. So I'm going to go back to the landing page here of my project online environment and show you some of the other options as well. So maybe PM and Resource Manager is meeting. They know specifically, okay, this is coming up in 3 weeks. I've got some development work, and I've kind of narrowed it down. I've worked with these 3 developers before. I know that they're the right skill set. Let's take a look. What are they doing? What are they working on? Okay, the PM might have some of that visibility in Project Pro. The resource or team manager for those developers may or may not have that kind of visibility. If they don't have Project Pro or they don't have the right permissions to go into the Resource Center and see that, that's where some of our other report pack reports can help as well. So we also have a resource capacity analysis. The behavior of it is kind of similar to the role capacity analysis, but you'll see the details. So we still have a start date and an end date, and again, I'll just go with beginning of February to the end of February, keep it in the current month. Okay, but here what you can do, you can just pull drop down and select individual resources from the resource pool. But again, if we're kind of using this in a lifecycle management type regard, you're probably going to start with a role. So when I select a role, let's say developer, instead of having to select from 300 resources, now it narrows it down to just the people that are my developers. And let's say for this particular work, I know that the candidates are, Alex is okay, Glenn's okay, Jason's okay, Jim, Jonas, Lionel, yeah. Richard and Zvi, they're contractors, and I know that they're not available right now. So, again, I'm kind of switching personas here and saying I might be the resource manager that has that information. So if we work together and collaborate on this, let's say, well, they're out, so let's not even include them in the analysis. I've got a couple other filters over here, which may be applicable. Maybe I need to pull developers from a specific department. Okay, if that's the case, by all means, select department, and what it's going to do is just going to narrow the total pool of resources I have at my disposal. Okay, there's also a filter on RBS. That's resource breakdown structure. That's essentially your reporting hierarchy. Now, in this particular demo environment, if I pull the drop down, I do not even have a resource breakdown structure defined, but it would look like kind of a reporting structure. It would be hierarchical. So you'd have offices, you'd have positions, basically kind of mimicking your org chart. So maybe I only want to pull developers that report to a specific development team lead. So you could use that with the RBS. Okay, a couple other filters that we have. When you go into the build team exercise, like I did earlier in Project Professional, I didn't really call it out at all, but when you add resources to a team, so here I'll just bounce back to it and show you again. So on this resource, add resources, build team from enterprise. When you add resources to the project, they have a booking type, committed or proposed. A lot of times the generic resources, since they're generic, it's really, we don't know who's going to do the work. So a lot of organizations would just kind of by default set their generic up as proposed. I don't generally like that approach though, because it's the work itself. It's the assignment. Are we proposing that we were going to do this, or are we actually committed to doing it? Now, I'm not committed to using this generic resource because it's not an actual human being. Okay, but my point is, you can use this as a planning tool here, and you can say, you know what, I might pull Nadine into this project, but we're not sure yet. Okay, so I could switch her over to proposed on this, and what's going to happen is, any of the assignments that are in here when I publish them, they're not going to show up on her timesheet, okay, because they're proposed. They're not solidified yet. And B, in reporting, I'm going to have to kind of go out of my way to have it show me Nadine's proposed assignments. Most of the reports that deal with resource utilization are by default just going to include the committed assignments. So I'm going to leave this screen here. I'm going to go back to my report. And that's what this status has to deal with. If you leave it at none, then it's going to consider both committed and proposed assignments. Okay. Type. I want to avoid the generics here. So just pull actual work resources. So if any of these resources that are selected are generic resources, don't include that in this, because I'm in this resource capacity analysis for a reason. I'm trying to really hone in on which resource I might be using for my project or for specific tasks in the project. So whenever you're done with all your filters, hit apply, and you'll see that the results are kind of similar to what we had in that role capacity analysis, with some exceptions. One, you've got multiple color-coded details here in the bar graph, and as I hover over each color, I can see which resource is being represented here. So in the month of February, and you know what, let's go out beyond just February here. Let's go February and March. We might have some leeway with some of these developer tasks that we're looking to staff resources on the team and get accomplished here. So let me rerun the report that spans a couple months. And as it's loading up the data and coming back, now I can see, okay, how it spans across different months. And again, color coded, so I can see what the impact is. I've got my legend over here on the right, so I can see who I'm dealing with. Plus, below that, you've got, now I'm seeing actually who are those developers. In the role capacity analysis, that was really just kind of for high-level planning, portfolio planning, stuff like that. Do we need more developers? We've got a big project coming up. We're not really to the point whatsoever of figuring out who's going to do the work, but do we actually have enough developers, period? Now we're diving a little bit more deeply, pulling back the cover some, and we're taking a look at specifics. I can see that Alex Simmons has some over allocations from this red text here. So if I expand out, I can see what's going on with this information. Okay, so I can see he's on a project called Tax Checker. Okay, he's on a project called Audit Tracking Solution. Individually, he's not over allocated in those two projects. I mean, he's not at 160 hours for either month, but across them, he is. So you can see that Alex Simmons, his utilization for the month of February is 112%. For the month of March is 177%. Now, 112%, he might just be able to pull some overtime, and that might be fine. So again, this would be part of the whole life cycle management. PM, resource manager, they collaborate, they confer. Can he do overtime? If that's the case, I'm not going to worry about resolving any over allocations I might see for him in the project plans that I manage. On the other hand, you look forward to March, 177, unless he's going to want to work double time and is able to work practically double time, that's probably something that we're going to have to take a look at, figuring out rescheduling some of this work, either reassigning it to another developer or maybe shifting some of the scheduled assignments that are on Alex's plate out a little further into the future. Okay, so you have this ability to, take a look at a resource by resource level. And again, you don't have to focus on a specific role. I could do developers and analysts, so I can come up here, pick multiple roles, hit apply. Depending upon how many people that represents, you might not want to do quite that many all at once. But, again, my point is, you don't have to do this role by role by role. All of these filters up here, you can combine maybe a couple different roles, but not everybody mapped to both of those roles. And of course, other thing that kind of bears mentioning, the more people you select in one report, it's going to take a little bit longer time to get your details back. But still, pretty quick information at my fingertips here on what people are doing in terms of whether they're analyst or developer. And again, I can expand them out down below and see, hey, there's Erin. So I was dealing with Erin, okay, and I can see, whether she's over allocated or not in this particular report.
And it's very colorful.
Very colorful.
I love it.
Third option, and again, this is one of those ones where, this might actually be the starting point. So, while this isn't the first report in our report pack that I show you, okay, it might kind of, be the starting point for, gleaning some of this useful information. Resource schedules. Resource schedules is really just a nice way to have, maybe a manager at their fingertips, what's my team doing right now? A Gantt chart is not a real nice interface for gleaning that kind of information. A calendar is, but if you look at Outlook calendars and, and you see, 30 items on one day in the calendar, that gets ugly pretty quickly. So we have these resource schedules that graphically will show you what people are doing, and it can be incorporated into the whole resource selection process. So this can be all part of being proactive about picking the right resources before you're at the point where you're a project manager and you're adding them to the team of the project and assigning them out to tasks. So you get a little glimpse of what's going on ahead of time. So resource schedule, again, lots of filters in here. So first thing you can do is set your date filter. Okay. So I'll just go ahead with, February 16th to March 28th. You can select one or more roles. So in this particular case, I'll just go with analyst again. So we know that Erin is part of that analysts group. And if you're not worried about taking a look at everybody in the analyst role, then again, by all means, you can deselect certain people. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and allow, here, we'll pull the very bottom one off the list. So, Tiana, let's not include her in this report. So again, she might be a contractor that's not a full-time employee, maybe doing other stuff. So again, select whichever you want to see. RBS filter, department filter, if you want to filter on that. Okay, whether you want to include committed or proposed, or leave it at none if you want to include both for the type of assignment. And then work type. So if you want to show generics as well, select generic. I don't want to see the generics in this, so I'm going to select work. And I'm going to hit the filter button. Okay, and depending upon the time frame that I selected, so mid-February to end of March, okay, it's going to give that to me. Now it's day by day, so if I select a long time period, I'm going to end up scrolling left and right quite a bit to cover the whole time period, unless I use a zoom function that you'll see in a little bit. But what it does in the results themselves, so on each day period, it color codes their total assignments across every project. If you're seeing red here, then that means that resource, Alex Darrow in this case, is over-allocated on that particular day. Now, is Alex over-allocated in every single day in this time period? Well, I don't want to have to scroll back and forth and all that good stuff to find out. So what I can do, I can use this zoom out feature here and just zoom it on a much broader scale. Okay, and I can see now, so actually, beginning of February, the yellow color coding, that means that there's an assignment. It's not fully being utilized, or the resource, I should say, is not fully being utilized, but there are some assignments on their plate for that day. So you can see Alex for February 17th, if I hover over, he's got 2 hours worth of assignments. If I go down to Garth, he's showing a green. That green's hitting the sweet spot. That means that they are fully or close to fully utilized. You can configure the thresholds of these colors, but the way I have them now, if they have between 6 and 8 hours of assignments on a day, it's going to show green. If they're over 8 hours, it's going to show red. And if they're under 6, it's going to show yellow. So lightly utilized but not fully utilized is the yellow. So a lot of these are 2s in here, which you can see. Okay, green, here's a 6 hours worth of work, and it's across 2 different projects. So I'm on the row for Bonnie Kearney, and I'm on February 26th. So she's doing 4 hours on the router benchmark system upgrade project and 2 hours on fiscal 15 analysis review. Okay. Next day, though, she's over allocated. So again, now what I can't do, I can't drag and drop stuff on here. So I can't redo the assignments or do the leveling. But again, in terms of being proactive and looking out ahead into the future and using this ahead of time, now I can kind of figure out what I have to work with when I do go into one or more project schedules and use the manual or the automatic leveling options. Okay, another thing that we have is, let me just go ahead and zoom back in here. And when you zoom in, obviously you can see a little bit more details on each day. So when you're seeing information that is, let's say unsatisfactory to you. So, let's scroll over here. Okay, now we are seeing Aaron over allocated across a couple different projects. Or if I'm up here, taking a look at Bonnie, and I'm seeing that, hey, she's showing some red here on this day. Each one of these resources, we've got some integration capabilities in here. So one of the things I can do, if you have Link installed, or if you're using Project Online and you have the Link license, the little, what they call the presence indicator, shows up with everybody in this report. So I can IM them directly from here, okay, or I can call them on Link directly from here, or I can just click the link to send them an email from here. Or I can tie this over into one of the resource utilization reports that you have in the resource center. So if I've run this thing and I've seen some unsatisfactory results from it on a particular individual, so Bonnie, let's see. So she's got some red, some yellow, and now I want to dive a little bit more deeply. If I click this little icon right here, it's going to take me to a resource utilization report that surfaces up from the resource center itself. Okay, and what I can do here is I can pick the date range, so start to and from. So I don't quite want to go out to the end of May, let's say, but from beginning of February to end of March. And whether I want to view it in days, weeks, months, quarter, kind of depends on how broad your range is here. So if I'm doing February beginning to end of March, weeks is probably going to be what I want to see. Do I want to show proposed bookings or just committed bookings? Whenever I'm ready for the results, I hit apply. And again, what it's going to do is it's going to show me, okay, capacity. Now, you might be wondering, well, hold on, you saw some red here, but let's think about what this is analyzing. On this resource schedules, she's only over allocated on one particular day, 10 hours. She's probably just going to buckle up and do those 10 hours, or if not, then maybe some of that 10-hour work will move into Tuesday the next day, and it'll balance out to 8 hours and 8 hours. Now, on the report that I linked to, I'm looking at a more macro level here. So I'm looking at a weekly level. She's not over allocated for any of those particular weeks. Okay, so again, gives you kind of big picture details here. So don't freak out when you see some red necessarily, unless there's a reason to freak out. So if you're seeing a lot of red on the resource schedules report, and then you link over here and you're seeing red for, oh my gosh, week after week after week, now we know that there's a little bit more heavy lifting that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to maybe talk to some other resources and distribute the load across them, or we're going to have to maybe push some of the scheduled tasks a little bit further out into the future. All right, so I'm just going to bounce back, and looking at my my little stopwatch app here, if you got 10 minutes left in here. So with regards to the reports in our Quick PMO report packs that do help you with resource management. Again, we've got this resource schedules, nice graphical report where I can go in, I can pick all kinds of individuals, or I can pick very few individuals. I can limit them by role or limit them by whether they're generic resources or not, and get a graphical, nice visual calendar type interface of what they're working on. Or for more detailed analysis, maybe go into the resource capacity here, so that I get a grid where I can see specifically what projects are they doing, how many assignments, how much work. Or for higher level, maybe do it at the role level. We've got the role capacity analysis, so we've got some reports that can help in that regard. Okay, and that kind of covers all the topics that I had planned to demo in the demonstration.
I did have one question from one
Yeah.
of the attendees.
Yeah.
He said if there was a PM on several projects
Mhm.
and you try to level, how do you set priority between projects?
How do you set priority between projects?
Is that
So, yeah, what you would want to do, a little bit advanced. There might be multiple answers to this, but the solution that I have used. Why is it not switching? There we go. Sorry about this. My task switcher is not cooperating right at the moment. Okay, hang tight here. I'll just have to relaunch the PowerPoint in a second. Okay, so over here in Project Pro, if I wanted to do that across a couple different projects, what I would probably do is I would start with a blank, what I'm going to refer to as a master project.
Sure.
Okay, and in my master, now I don't have that loaded up here, but in my master project, I can go over here to the project tab and I can insert sub-projects. So let's say he's talking about 3 different projects. He or she is talking about 3 different projects. So I'm the project manager of 3 different projects, and I want to control the priority across those 3 different projects. If I load them all into one master plan as sub-projects, and I use the priority column, that priority column will apply across all 3 sub-projects. So I can say, hey, this one can't move from leveling, so change that to 1,000. This one can move, but it would be one of the ones that I would like other things to move first, so maybe make that a 900. This is a great candidate for moving, so let's actually drop that down to 100, and so on and so forth. So if you load those multiple projects up in as sub-projects, then the priority column that you use here for leveling, it will apply across those multiple projects. I did everything in this demo with the perspective of one project at a time, but yeah, it will work across multiples.
That's great. Do we want to? Does anybody have any quick questions since we're getting low on time? And you can just speak up if you want to ask a quick question.
Or you can continue to type them in if you want to think about it a little bit. Type them into the chat window.
Can you set it back to
In the meantime, yeah.
Okay. So feel free to speak up and interrupt. I wanted to go over the report packs. What Aaron demonstrated today was the resource management report pack, but we do have other report packs that are available to purchase, and we will have this question on our survey. So if you want to find out more about the report packs,
I scratched the surface of maybe 20% of
Exactly.
what we have out there for dashboard reporting purposes. And you can see from the list here, some of them deal with financial management, some of them deal with program or portfolio management, some of them are for audit and compliance. So a lot of different areas.
and these are very easy to add on to your existing Project Server, Project Online implementation. And if you want, we can even do a demo for you and your PMO to show you the different types of report backs and talk about the add-on
Implications.
Thank you.
The implementifications.
Yes, that's exactly the word I was thinking of. So,
The implications of implementing.
thank you.
Right.
That's why he's the presenter. Okay, and just to review the next slide. Oh, this is new. I thought we were doing schedule it, but I talked about the support services a little bit in the beginning, and this is something that has really taken off with our company. We go into a client and we install or implement Quick PMO, or we do a project server implementation, or we go in to help them fix their project server that they already implemented and they can't, they're having all kinds of issues. We have this support offering that talks about that. We have this support offering that we have 3 different levels at certain hours a month, and we have a dedicated support team. We're not just our architects are going to answer your call on the fly. We have a dedicated support team that will deal with your support issues. You call or email us with a ticket, and we have different levels of people to help you. We have developers, we have architects, we have schedulers. They can all troubleshoot your project server tickets. And if you want more information on that, we can speak to that and we can have a call on that offline. So, next steps. Here is a link to all of our webcasts. The first link above the table will take you to a page where all of our webcasts are. So if you'd like to, you can click on that now. You can go to the page. It is the Microsoft Click to Attend registration page, and that will list all of our In the Trenches webcasts. But here is each webcast now until August, and here are some of the topics that we'll be covering. Next, later on this month, we're going to talk about change management, which is something that every organization goes through. We're going to dive into reporting and compliance in March, portfolio analysis, demand management, tracking budgets, preparing for your next migration, and project lessons learned. And if there is a topic that you would like to see, we don't have topics for the rest of the year, but we are working on them. Feel free to include that in the survey, and we would love to put that on our calendar.
Absolutely.
So the next page is just a big thank you so much. We enjoyed having you here today. You can click on the link for the survey. I will send out the survey to all of the attendees, and remember to connect with us on social media, because we want to build a community. We want to build a following. We want to build this relationship with current customers and new clients. We also are in the process of starting an advisory council of our current customers, and that is something that if you're interested in, I can speak to that offline as well. So, are there any additional questions about Vibrant Fusion, Quick PMO, Project Server, Project Online, or reporting, resource management?
I'll be hanging out for approximately another 5 minutes. So if you have any, feel free to blurt it out on the conference line, or if you are more comfortable typing it into the chat window. Either way, but we will be hanging out for a few more minutes. If you don't have any questions, again, please do take our survey. Don't forget that. Keep an eye out for our and actually click the link to sign up for our upcoming In the Trenches sessions. But if you don't have any other questions at this point, you are free to take off if you want. So depending on which time zone you're in, you might want to grab a late lunch if you're in the Eastern time zone.
And thank you so much, and we'll see you later on this month for our next webcast.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, folks.
This is Steve Clark.
Hi, Steve.
Okay. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Can you just go, just at a high level, can you just go through some of the integration that you would
talked about was that Project Server Online did integrate with Link if you have that installed. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, so depending upon, I mean, integration across the Microsoft stack is kind of, it's kind of like there behind the scenes out of the box. So, integration with SharePoint, it's there. Whether you have your SharePoint also in Office 365, which is, Project Online, or you have it on premises. Link, Exchange. So when, some of the things I didn't point out during this meeting, but like when tasks do get moved or tasks get assigned to individuals, you can have email alerts being, going out and stuff like that. So people don't have to just log into this interface day by day to see what's going on here. So email, it's tied in with this as well. Integration with other tools, like maybe a financial system or an enterprise, like ERP in the other sense. So not enterprise resource pool, but an ERP tool like SAP or something like that. A lot of times that's a development effort. So, a lot of times there are custom connectors that can be built by organizations. And that's where we generally would say, if you don't have Project Server yet, you're probably going to want to, lean a little bit more heavily towards doing it on premises versus having Project Online. Project Online is pretty much full-featured Project Server, but in terms of the integration with other line of business systems, you're going to be somewhat limited in what you can do there because, let's face it, it's in Microsoft's cloud, so you don't, you're not able to directly log on to those servers and install apps and stuff like that. So, aside from that, I mean, did you have anything specific with the integration other than that?
No, I was just curious because I was trying to understand what degree, if you have, I'm trying to understand for the organization here whether it's best to do it on premises or in the cloud.
Okay, I mean, so
I'm trying to understand for the Project Online what the integration capabilities are, because I thought that if you had things installed locally, like Link, like SharePoint and Outlook, that they did not integrate with Project Online.
So I guess it kind of depends on which of those components specifically you're talking about. I mean, so if, for instance, you had Exchange locally, I mean, you could get your notifications, your email, workflow email, stuff like that going with an on-premises. So you could mix and match in that regard. Link does have to be in the same environment. So whether it's, whether they're both on-prem or both online, that's one where now there might be a way if you use on-premises Project Server to get it to use your Link in the cloud, but it does not work in the opposite. So if you have Project Online, but a local Link environment, you won't have that automatic integration in there. But when they do match, yes, you'll have it. SharePoint can also kind of go across too. So it depending upon to what level of detail you're talking about. So if you wanted to, link from project details to a local SharePoint site, like if you store some of your artifacts in localized SharePoint, that would certainly work. If you wanted to tie in issues and risks from a local SharePoint site to a project that's up in Project Online in the cloud, that's where the integration would break down to the point where both of those tools would have to be in the same environment. If they're both in the online world, they'll work. If they're both on-prem, they'll work. If you're crossing back and forth, probably not without a development effort. So it depends where you break down specifically those different pieces, if that helps.
Okay, so I think that helps. So in the event that I wanted to publish a Microsoft project schedule to a task list on SharePoint, I could not do that if it was Project Server in the cloud and my SharePoint was on site.
You couldn't do it through just automatic configuration and having it done easily. You would have to do a little custom development to do that. If it were both in the same environment, it's just configuring the tool to do it. It works under the hood. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So all right.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my understanding. So I just wanted to.
Okay. Well, good.
The link sounded like it was a little bit different.
Yeah. Link is, so again, with on-premises project and in the cloud Link, I don't want to state this completely authoritatively, but I do think you can get those two working together. But I know when you have project online and Link locally, again, that automatic integration, it's just not there.
Okay.
So it's in either case,
Move on to,
it's going to be easier when they match. So either both on-prem or both in the cloud.
okay. So let me move to my next question is, have you at Vibrant Fusion developed a PeopleSoft interface or not PeopleSoft interface, but an advanced Active Directory interface so that I can pull roles from my Active Directory and manage it in Active Directory rather than a project?
So specifically to map the role assignments, you're saying. So we're not just talking about pulling the resources themselves from Active Directory, which of course happens natively, but pulling some attributes that you have in AD and mapping them to the attributes in Project Server. I believe so. I'm just one architect here. I haven't worked on a project where that's been done, but I'm pretty sure we have done that, and some of our developers have done that with an on-premises environment. I'm not sure if we've done that with a project online environment, but I could certainly look into that and have Nadine email you the more definitive answer. So we've done I've been involved with some things where we've integrated with other systems, like for instance a PTO system. So if people have their PTO approved elsewhere, well, we're going to pull that into Project Server so that it marks them as, that's non-working time for me. I shouldn't have to do something also in Project Server. So I've worked on some stuff like that. And what you're describing would be kind of similar. It's a different platform. It's AD, but you're basically taking values from your users in there, an attribute value like role, and you're mapping it into them in the enterprise resource pool here. So, I'm pretty sure we've done some work pretty similarly to that, but have we done that exactly? I'd have to check around the organization to make sure.
Yeah, well, that'd be a utility that you could probably incorporate.
Right, throw in the App Store maybe, and yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Good.
Okay.
That's it for today.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for attending.
Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
You are the last party in the conference.
We're done. Good job.
Topeka bounced out already?
Yeah. What did she say?